So thanks for joining us in this session where I'm talking to Gary Davidson, who's been involved in ministry in Ireland for over 38 years and continues to be involved in ministry with a relationship into CCI here in Ireland, but also is responsible for the Oklahoma effort in world missions from the Assemblies of God over there, where he's overseeing a budget of 17 million and relating to missionaries all over the world. So Gary, very much still involved in ministry. And today we're going to talk about things that sometimes he wished somebody had told him at the beginning of his ministry, but he has certainly learned over the years. So Gary, thanks again for giving us your time. I'm not going to, it's not going to be a sort of a conversation about these things. These are things you've learned. So, but just to prompt you, could you talk to us about this concept of finding your sweet spot?
Okay, well, I found her 59 years ago last week. But anyway.
Her name is Wilma. Yes.
Okay, yes. Several years ago, I was asked to do a session on what an older Gary would tell a younger Gary. And when I got over being offended, I just simply sat down and began to write out a few things that I felt was essential elements of my own life. And I don't even know where I come up with this term, but find your sweet spot and feed it. And the statement was, you will be tomorrow the books that you read today and the people that you run with. And I've realized that there are places in all of our life that we're very comfortable and that feed us and emotionally recharge us. One of my best places is wherever I've been, I've always tried to have an easy chair, a recliner, and a lamp there. And I would sit there, usually with a good cup of strong Irish tea, and just begin to spend time with the Lord, hear from the Lord. And when those things are neglected, I can sense that immediately within a couple of days. I get too busy, too many things going, taking up too much headspace and so on. So finding that place that feeds you emotionally and builds you up and keeps restoring that sense of God. Everybody has a different sweet spot. My son, for instance, is an avid outdoorsman and hunter. And you put him in you put him out hunting deer. You put him in a tree with his New Testament, and even if he doesn't see any game, it replenishes his emotional resources. Everybody has different ones. I remember reading Eugene Peterson's story, and he said he loved detective stories, and actually he would be so busy writing commentaries. Obviously, he did the Message Bible, and that he just needed space to feed that other side of his brain. And he said he could read a detective story, and it kind of restored the juices of creativity. So I don't know what yours is, but that's where I find mine. And I think it's essential that we feed that, and when we neglect it, we pay for it long term.
So at that place where you can be replenished.
That's right, yeah. The Bethel, Jacob, it was Bethel for Jacob. He kept going back to Bethel. Yeah. Go back to that place that replenishes your spiritual, emotional, even physical resources.
Yeah. The next point that you had on your list was don't let the dream killers get you down. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we both met some of those over the years, but how do you prevent that from happening?
When I came to Ireland, I was told that no one ever lasted here for the long haul. That the longest anybody ever come in and served in capacity I was seeking to serve in had been maybe 8 years or so, and they left. And I will say, in my over 40 years of serving here, I've seen many people. In fact, I said one time, I've seen more people leave than stay. And they said, well, it's not possible. Well, it felt that way. Because, and I think anywhere that you go, it's a new field, a new place of harvest and so on. There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be challenges that you never expected. But I was told that I'd never last. I was also told, because you probably noticed I have a bit of a southern drawl from Oklahoma, the United States, that would never be accepted here.
Okay.
And so, how do you get rid of that? I mean, you can't. So I was told I would never be successful here. But all I knew was God called me. My responsibility was to be obedient to call and be faithful in that call and keep showing up and trust Him to help me and by His grace. But there's always going to be those dream killers that say you can't do it. But we have to get our motivation from that group of friends that we've developed, those relationships, and from the Lord that has called us.
And it kind of, and I don't want to develop this too much, but it does strike me that when we talk about the different types of people who affect us, they're very draining people.
That's right.
There are, I can't even remember all the terms, but there's the normal people that we just relate to.
Yes.
And then there's the very encouraging, or the people who give, the VIPs, the people who give you energy. And I suppose what you're saying is that, as well as the naysayers and the people who would pull you down, it's essential to have around you and close to you people who will build you up and encourage you.
Absolutely.
And you didn't choose the naysayers, but you deliberately went and formed a group who would encourage and help you. Was that important?
Absolutely essential. I mean, we're both great friends of, and we served as elders together with Noel McFarland.
Yes.
The elder's elder, and of course Noel is with the Lord. But a few years on, I found out that Noel had said the first time he met me, "You watch the fella there, because God has His hand on him. I believe God has called him here to raise up a work." And when I found that out, because he was a man of such integrity and lived close to the heart of God, walked through a very difficult last 30 years of his life because his wife was an invalid. But it was like a skip in my heart. I thought, if Noel believes in me, I can do this.
Yes.
And we need those kind of people.
Yeah. The third point that you mentioned was investing in relationships for the long haul. Talk to us about that.
I think you have to nurture these relationships, and those relationships have what kept me. And we see in 2 Timothy in the 2nd chapter, Paul talks about, now Paul didn't seem to be one of these guys that you could easily relate to, but Paul talks about all of these relationships, and he was actually, there are names of numerous people he refers to, and the only time we ever hear of these people is in his writings, one time. And he talks about these people that encouraged him, that blessed him. So we've got to have that group of people around us that believe in us, that trust us. But to do that, we have to invest in those relationships. We've got to give them time. I've used it before in these sessions. We've got to be intentional. We've got to invest our time and resources into those relationships. And we have to know each other well enough to have enough information, and we understand their history. And as we do that together, that becomes a life source into our life. What was the first emotional need that God recognized in the earth that He, when He finished every day, He said, "And it is good, it is good." The first time He said it wasn't good was that Adam was alone. And so let us make man a helpmate. And so we need those relationships. And so if in the garden that was a lack, how much more today in a fallen world that's a lack. So we need those relationships. Out of relationships, I get energy. It restores I can go into meetings and be exhausted, but when I start relating to people, it restores my energy. So, you invest in relationships for the long term.
So it's not, you just don't casually connect with people and have a team. That this requires investment.
Or
It requires
investment and
personal
testing.
connection. Yeah.
You got to test those relationships.
Your next point is when you're unsure the direction to go, don't be afraid to ask for help. Sometimes it's you become very vulnerable when you ask for
That's
help.
right.
Talk to us about that.
There's an old African proverb: if you want to travel fast, travel alone. If you want to travel far, travel together.
Okay.
And I think when we look at what God has done here in CCI and what God has done over 40 years now, you see there's a group of us that have been together over 40 years. I mean, we go all the way back to Whiteville House,
Yes.
where I first would have met you. And all of those relationships developed that are still existent today. Studying the life of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, you realize there was a group of men that came together and they served together for until the first one passed away for nearly 40 years. Mm-hmm. And everyone would say the strength of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association wasn't just his the great communicator and the godly man Billy Graham himself, but was those he brought around him. And those individuals had the right to speak into his life and disagree with him. And, we've kind of built up this idea of an icon that did everything right. And yet he needed those individuals around him. So I understood early on I needed to invest in relationships, and then I need to be vulnerable and open. There's times you have spoken in my life, a correction that I needed. I was spoken into your life. And I think there has to be that humility among us that we allow individuals to speak into our life. And I think we study the lives in the last 2 generations especially. We've seen some individuals that had great ministries, worldwide ministries, yet they were seriously flawed. Mm-hmm. And everyone around them realized, but nobody would speak into that flaw and that failure and pull them up. And but that takes humility. And a friend of mine often says, we're just not that good. And so we need a team around us. This is the old proverb, you can't spell team with an I. Yeah. It's about all of us traveling this road together.
Yeah. And I remember, I think it was in one of the early episodes we did in the series, you spoke about there were times even when you faced issues which even the team around you wouldn't have had the experience or the wisdom to handle, and you reached out, sometimes beyond these shores.
Yes, absolutely.
But either to mentors or able people with great experience, whether that be in the US or the UK, wherever you had those relationships. But that meant you also had relationships to mentors, to more senior people, and you were able to go ask them for help.
And let them speak in my life. In fact, now, and I remember the early years, we encountered things in the spirit realm that I'd never encountered.
Right.
And I knew this man in the States, Ben Tipton, who was a great missionary in Africa for many years, miracle ministry, remarkably used of the Lord. And I brought him to Ireland twice to teach us, to mentor us, a number of others like him we brought over from the UK as well. Because I just realized I was encountering something. In fact, when I studied the history of the contribution of the Assemblies of God going back to the late 40s and 50s, I found that 3 significant individuals had come here to minister, and all of them had died tragic deaths. Wow. And I remember thinking, oh my, is this what, and I'm certainly a strong believer that until my work is finished, the enemy can't take me out. I don't believe he can ever take me out unless I do something very foolish. But I also had to understand something in the spirit realm. We fight not against flesh and blood. And so Ben taught me so much about recognizing, being sensitive. Also, I remember speaking to John Wimper about it, about encountering demonic forces. And I'll never forget, he said, Gary, sometimes the enemy loves to put on a show and sideshow Jesus. And obviously we study the history of Satan. He was cast out of heaven because he sought to be an usurper and have the role that Jesus had in that worship. So obviously he's still at it today. And so then I learned that I could take authority and take those and simply stand up and address it from the front. Say, we won't tolerate this, because sometimes you're not sure whether it's just an individual wanting attention or actually some type of demonic manifestation. We can't do this alone. And I think purposely he brings teams together, and everybody has their strengths and everybody has their weaknesses, but together we go forward.
Yep. Learn to trust in the good seed that you have sown.
Well, delay doesn't mean denial. So interesting, just recently I was in a meeting. I remember God speaking to me out of the book of Psalms early when I was first pastor of a small rural church that we're trying to get just grounded and then begin to launch forward and see some growth. And I was reading, and it just seemed like nothing was coming together. And I was reading in the Psalm 1, which I'd committed to memory. And in Psalm 1, it says, shall bring forth, it talks about the righteous, shall bring forth his fruit, their fruit in their season. You don't grow strawberries in January. And you don't harvest them in the summer, in the springtime. You harvest them in the late summer and the fall. And so once I suddenly realized I'm in my season. What season? Understanding the seasonality in all of our lives. Right now, my season is tilling. My season is planting. My season is preparing the soil. But one day harvest will come. So recently, I was in a meeting, a fundraising, in a church. They were raising funds. And there was a young man there, and he got a significant gift. And he was very pleased about it. I didn't tell him. I got 5 times the gift he did. And immediately this came back to me again. I'm in a different season. Wilma and I are really in a harvest season right now in our lives. So I think we need to trust that we were planting. The season of planting is absolutely essential if we're going to get a harvest.
Yeah.
So we give ourselves as much to the planting of the seed and trusting in it. The scripture, says in Ecclesiastes, cast your bread on the waters and you shall find it after many days. By the God's grace, and you're also a very generous person, and by God's grace, God is able to be generous and not have a grasping spirit. And I've cast a lot of bread on the waters, and so have you. And Joe, we're living in a harvest time. I'm seeing a lot of return, and so are you. We're seeing it not just even with resources, but we're seeing it in our families. We're seeing it in the ministries we're committed to. So trust in the seed that are planted that one day we'll have a harvest. It's the best seed. It's good seed. It's eternal seed.
And let God look
God
after the
gives the
growth.
harvest.
Yeah.
What was it? Paul said, one sows, one waters, but God gives the
God
harvest.
gives the harvest. And then the final point in this session is there are always trade-offs. Talk to surely everything goes perfectly.
Yeah, everything always, just the challenges, they never happen, but once every morning when you arise. I don't even know. I just love that scripture. Said God is no debtor to any man. So for Wilma and I to leave America and come here was a sacrifice.
Yes.
In fact, I worked with over 100 missionaries and well over 100 missionaries and personnel around the world. And I know the greatest, most difficult sacrifice they make is if they remain and their children return to the States. And that's, I say it's the hardest thing we always did. A lot of stuff that we encountered here was tough, but that was the toughest. And recently I was working with a couple, they're at that season of their life. And I said, I can't help you. All I know is you look to the Lord. And I remember being with a couple who were struggling, had an excellent ministry in Europe, and they knew if they came back, they would have to leave their 2 children. And I'd met with him. He had a sovereign call. And then I had a concern if he's got a call, and she says, we can't do this, there could be trouble in that marriage. And so we invited him to our home, and this young lady begins to share. And when she starts sharing, Wilma starts crying. And she looked at Wilma and said, you understand. And Wilma didn't have any words of wisdom. She just said, I'll pray for you. And I didn't know at that time, but when they left our home, she got in the car. She said, we'll go one day.
Wow.
And they're today in Liverpool planting a church.
Wow.
And in the providence of God, their older young adult children are with them. But so we gave up a lot. Wilma and I both had lost our fathers. My father was very young. Her father was several years older than her dad. My father was totally unexpected. So we'd been pastoring near our widowed mothers for many years. And then our baby comes along, Dana. My mother and her were just besotted with each other. We lived across the field. And so Dana's 2 years old, and we take her away. But God reminded me he's not a debtor to my mother or to me. So I come over here, begin to develop these relationships with in this nation, but also my mother's family is from England. Mm. So my mother's family became, and you met my Uncle Ted, yes, who was a prisoner of war for years. He mentored me by his lifestyle when I was just a young boy. And he was on a journey of faith when I came here. I mentored him in faith, and he became the older father that I never had. And when I gave the eulogy when he went home to be with the Lord, I remember I was so moved emotionally, but also at his loss, but also very thankful that for 15 years, God gave me back what I had lost. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love that you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help him. So I say to you, and I say to those that are watching, God is not a debtor to anyone. You sow good seed, you're going to get a harvest. And so God restored much of what we gave up to come here. God restored to us, and we've enjoyed it. So now we have these massive group of relationships here and in Europe and also in America. God has been ever faithful to us. I asked the Lord at the handover, I said, Lord, why have you been so good to me? Why have you given me all this? I know my limitations and I know my flaws. And how could you be so good to me? And as sure as I've ever known God to speak, we talk about does God speak? Did God speak audibly? I say sometimes it's louder than that. I knew that the Lord said to me because I was faithful to the process. The only way I know to say is, I guess for 38 years I just kept showing up. And God said, if he keeps showing up, I'm just going to go ahead and use him. So I think with all of us and to those that will be watching this session, I would say, just keep showing up. Let God work through you.
Well, Gary, thank you so much. That wisdom is a blessing to me, even in my old age.
Yes. Well, you're still a young snapper.
But will be a blessing to many, many people watching this. Thank you for joining us. We hope this has been a blessing to you. And God bless you and the work that you're doing. And Gary, God bless you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you.